friends, I'm Jess and welcome to the Hexed Library, where I post reading, writing, book, and planner related content a couple of times a week. Today is going to be my wrap up for the month of July, as well as the bingo board from hell, balancing the books. Bingo board from hell. You know what I'm saying. Cool. I'm finally getting caught up. It's August 7th. I'm filming a lot of videos today. I'm very behind. But we are getting to July's wrap up today. So at least we're getting caught up. In the month of July, I read a very respectable 6 books with a total of 2,063 pages. I read 24 books in June, so like we knew that there was going to be a big crash after. There's always a slog after the amazing Re-Readathon, so we knew that was going to happen. My average rating was 3.6, which is I think the worst I've had so far this year, but I didn't really hate anything I read. It's just that I didn't read enough really to counteract the lower rated books because I didn't read very much. That is not to say that if you normally read less than 6 books a month that you don't read very much. Just for me, 6 is not a lot. My usual is about 10 to 12, so it's neither here nor there. Anywho, we will be doing our Balancing the Books bingo board from hell, so I'm going to slide over here so we can have our beautiful, beautiful little board to go with as well. And we are just going to get started with books that are not on the bingo board. So the first book that we have at a 3.25 out of 5 stars is The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden. I read this on my trip up to Pennsylvania to Julie and Amber's for the week for vacation. Our main character, who is a mother of 2 teenage children, and she has a husband, and her son she thinks is a little weird, but he is her favorite child. Her daughter gives her lots of problems, her son really doesn't. But she notices that there are some very odd things about him. He had some problems in his past of things that he had done previously when he was younger. He kind of gives off sociopath vibes to his mother, who's kind of trying to keep an eye on him. And throughout the book, someone that he was friends with has gone missing, and the police are basically saying that they think that he kidnapped her and murdered her, and it's the mother trying to figure out what really happened and whether or not her son is a Looney Tune, basically. I really liked the plot twist in this. I don't think that I ever really was like surprised by what happened, which is typical with Frida. But like, I'm rarely ever surprised by the plot twist because it's one of those things where like, as I'm reading, I'm like, you know, it would be wild if it happened. And that's the thing that happens. And so I love the plot twist because I'm like, it is wild. I do love it. I love the crazy. I love the bullshit bananas of Frida's plot twists. This was not my favorite of hers by far, but I think it's because it's a little more domestic than some of the other books that we've gotten from her. Also, maybe at this point, it's just because I've read so many of them recently. They kind of feel like they're starting to bundle together. But also, I read this on a car trip, and I have noticed that books that I read on a car trip, especially when I'm reading one book on the entire trip there, they do tend to be rated lower, and I think it's just because of like the boredom and the monotony of driving for 7 hours and listening to the same audiobook. So I may in the future try to like switch up audiobooks while I'm driving and like not make it quite so monotonous, if you will. The next book that I read that does not go on the board is Hexed by Kevin Hearn. This is the second book in the Iron Druid Chronicles, and I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I also listened to part of this while I was on the drive, but then finished when I got home. And I did like the back half more than the front half. Was that because I was driving home from Julie and Amber's? Maybe, I don't know. It wasn't as bad as last year's, for sure, but I did really like this book. I do like the characters and I like the world building. I like the mythos of like the druids and all of their different gods and everything being all put together. I like our main character, and I like the other characters that we're getting to see. I love his doggo. I have so many things about this series that I'm really enjoying. I'm only on book 2 of like 12 or 14 or however many books there are, but I do plan to continue reading on. We then have at 4.25 out of 5 stars, The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. This was, I think, the last haunted house book of Darcy's that I have left to read, which is very sad for me. I think I still haven't read Craven Manor, but I don't know if that's a haunted house one. It could be. I could be wrong. Or I've read it and I've forgotten that I've read it. Yeah, this one I really liked. It follows our main character who is buying this house that really speaks to her, but the house has a very dark history. Honestly, I would have rated this higher, but there were some things that I couldn't look past. Like, this house has never been wired for electrics, but it has a washer and dryer. The math do not math. There's also like a television set that's left by one of the previous families. And like, yes, they could have ran those things off of a generator, but the likelihood of that is really low. That in the 90s you would have ran all of these electrical appliances and things, refrigerators, washers and dryers, televisions off of a generator and not gotten electrics into the house. It was questionable. It was a questionable decision in my opinion. And it really took away from a lot of it took me out of the story. Like, it was so egregious that it took me out of the story. But as far as like the plotline of the book goes and like how wild things got and just the backstory of the house, it was very creepy. There were some things that happened in it that are like so much like my favorite horror movies. You know, the thing that happens that you're like, why are you doing that? You're so stupid. You know, those things made me very happy. So I did really enjoy it. I do wish she had taken out the part about the house never having had electrics in it, because again, it took me out of the story. But again, Darcy Coates can do no wrong, I have discovered. Well, let's get to the bingo board from hell. In the month, my top left square is 12 books by 12 friends. I did not read any of those this month, so we are still at 3. Are we going to make it there by the end of the year? No, we're not. The middle square is our 10 times under 60 physical TBR books. In the last video where I did my Balancing the Books bingo board from hell, I did discuss that I counted everything physically at the end of July so I would know where I was at for sure, and that is at 53 books. So we are going to count that for this month, and so we are at 53, which means we're under 60, so that gives us a 7 in that column. For new releases, I read The Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This puts us at 15 for this square, and I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. I should have probably rated it lower, but I rated it as if it was not a mystery thriller, because in my opinion, it is not a mystery thriller or horror. It is like a family drama. Okay? There is a mystery, but it's not thrillery, it's not horror. It's very much just like a familial drama. This is not one of Riley's best books, but also certainly not one of his worst. I did enjoy it, and honestly this got rated higher because I did cry multiple times while reading this book. There was a plot twist in the back half that really threw me for a loop, and it did not have anything to do with the actual like mystery part of the book. There was a plot twist in the back half that really hit me hard. Sorry, I was really having some camera issues there. That took square C up to 15. For the library book square, I read nothing from the library this month, so that stays at 8. For the physical TBR backlist, nothing, so that stays at 17. The next is book club books, and I did have 2 book club books this month. We first have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, that's his name. I give this a 2.25 out of 5 stars. I hate this book. I should have rated it lower. I will say, I did learn some things. We're going to talk spoilers about this book, so just so you are aware, I feel like this book has been out long enough and most of us have read it, so I don't care. We're going to talk about spoilers. One of the first egregious things about this book, and also this book is just about a guy who pines after a woman that he can't have because she's married and has a child that we only see one time because she's just forgotten about. Anywho. And then she runs over her husband's mistress with a car. There's a lot. Anyway, the first thing that I highlighted was, she was in the middle 30s and faintly stout, but she carried her surplus flesh sensuously, as some women can. Surplus flesh. Surplus flesh. Thank you for that, Fitzgerald. I needed that. Then our love interest's husband breaks his mistress's nose by smacking her across the face. What a catch. First off, he takes his wife's cousin to meet his mistress to like show her off, her and her surplus flesh. And then he smacks her across the face and breaks her nose. And then there's this weird scene at the end where they're going down an elevator. Okay, Nick, who is our main character, is the cousin of Daisy. He is with Tom, Daisy's husband, and his mistress and some other random people. Nick is leaving because he just watched this dude punch some bitch in the face and he's like, I'm out. And he ends up going down the elevator with Mr. McKee. And Mr. McKee says, come to lunch someday. He suggested as we groaned down the elevator. Where? Nick says. Anywhere. Keep your hands off the lever, snapped the elevator boy. Random. I beg your pardon, said Mr. McKee with dignity. I didn't know I was touching it. All right, I agreed. I'll be glad to. Then there's some ellipses, and then I was standing beside his bed, and he was sitting up between the sheets, clad in his underwear, with a great portfolio in his hands. I'm pretty sure. I had to look this up because I was lost. I went, wait, is Nick gay? And why is that the introduction to Nick being gay that we get? Probably because this was written in the 20s. The elevator boy said to keep your hands off the lever. What is the lever? Why did he snap at him about touching the lever? And then he said, with dignity, I beg your pardon. I didn't know I was touching it. Was he touching the elevator boy in inappropriate places? And then him and Nick went back home because he was in his bed between the sheets, clad in his underwear. But if you look up like what scholars say about that chapter, that's definitely not what happened. They just like, that's what happened when they went to lunch, because gay people don't exist in the 20s. Those are new. It's a whole newfangled concept, gay people. Anyway, that was a time. There's also so many things to highlight. The only thing I really liked about this book, because God knows I hated it, I learned things. I had to look things up. So this was written in 1925. This book is so bad that no one bought it, and it went out of print within a couple of years after it being published. And then it was purchased by a school to be circulated to the children at the school to read. And since then it has been a staple in schools since the mid 40s to early 50s. It was out of print for over a decade because it was so bad nobody wanted to buy it. And yet we were like, nah, just give it to the kids. It'll be fine. So, you know, whoever decided to put this into schools is a hot fucking mess, and I want to punch them in the face because I had to read this in school. And then decided to read it again for book club because I am a glutton for punishment, if nothing else. I also learned, here's my notes. Okay. So on page 170 of this version, page 170, I had to look up when this book was published because he talks about having gone to this office of the Swastika Holding Company, and he mentions that the secretary is a lovely Jewess. And I was like, what? When was this written? Oh, 1925. We're cool. We're cool. We're cool. We're cool. The Swastika Holding Company and a Jew in the same paragraph. That was questionable. But the other questionable thing that I actually did some major research on and we're going to discuss when we get to the end of the book and the murder-suicide has happened. The paragraph is, at the end of the chapter is, it was after we started with dead body toward the house that the gardener saw other dead body a little way off in the grass, and the Holocaust was complete. This is on page 162. And I went, the Holocaust? When was this published? So I had to look up the etymology, not the entomology because that's bugs, the etymology of the word Holocaust because I was very confused. It's lowercase, and I've only ever read it as uppercase when we're talking about the Holocaust, aka the murder of Jews in during the World War II period of 1939 to 1942, 1938 to 1942, somewhere around about in there. So I did, again, some research into the word Holocaust, and I actually found out some very interesting information. So the Holocaust is derived from the Greek word holocauston, which means a burnt sacrifice offered whole to God. Terrifying. The first time Holocaust was used to describe a genocide was actually during the Armenian Holocaust of the late 1800s. Genocide was not a word at that moment in history. It was not coined until the German War in the 1940s. So genocide was actually a word that was coined to describe the destruction of the Jewish peoples. Once we started referring to the Jewish genocide as the Holocaust with a capital H, other Holocausts were shifted to be genocides. So the Armenian Holocaust is now commonly referred to as the Armenian Genocide, even though the term didn't exist when it happened. And you can find like old news articles and things of during the late 1800s, early 1900s that were talking about the Armenian genocide, and they all say the Armenian Holocaust. And the Holocaust was also used in the Bible to describe the description of Jewish temples, and also during the burning of suspected witches. So Holocaust has been used for centuries to describe basically any time you sacrifice a body through fire, which makes sense as to why we use it for the term of the Holocaust, the German War. But the idea that other Holocausts that had existed previously, like, they were stripped of the name and given the term genocide, even though genocide didn't exist when that had happened and Holocaust did. And then we just gave the war of the 1940s the term the Holocaust. It was interesting to learn, especially for someone like me who hates World War II history. So had that been part of my history lesson in school, I probably would have liked it. But I did discuss that with my book club about the etymology of that word and about the fact that I tried to look up the entomology of Holocaust and found out that that is bugs, because I'm stupid. Okay, and then the final thing that we'll talk about with The Great Gatsby, there's on page 179, again, of my copy, where we're talking about Tom and Daisy, again, the aforementioned couple who were absolute pieces of shit. And it says, they were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made. And that is basically the entire premise of this book. Tom and Daisy are pieces of shit, and everything that they touch turns to shit, and I think this book is shit. Okay, so that was The Great Gatsby. Anyway, and then I also, for our book club, read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. It follows our best friend Feyre, who gets kidnapped by her best friend Tamlin, who's not her best friend, but we're going to call him her best friend. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling where Feyre kills a wolf in the woods who happens to be Fae, and then gets taken in by this Fae guy named Tamlin, who's kind of a douchebag, and then he holds her captive, takes her from her family. Her families are also kind of douchebags, especially Nesta. I really want to punch that bitch in the face. I like her better now than I did at the beginning of the book, but that's a whole other thing for a whole other nickel. I gave this 3.75 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this book so much that I had to purchase the entire series. We did discuss that in my last haul video, because that's when I discussed the hauling these books. If you're interested in this cover, it is by Dominique Wesson for A Touch of Magic Designs. It is available to purchase, and it does fit the new hardback covers if you have those ugly ass fucking covers and you would like something prettier to wrap your books in. Okay, I really enjoyed this story. The first half was a bit hit or miss. It was a bit repetitive, but I mean, she's been kidnapped and she's locked in a house. Like, how much can fucking happen? But the second half of the book was badass. I liked the second half. There was like trials and war and drunken debauchery, and it was a fun time. I'm definitely excited to see where book 2 goes. I am having a fun time. So overall experience, 3,000 times better than The Great Gatsby, if we're being honest. Okay, so that puts our book club books square at 16. Again, we're probably going to double that this year. We're going to double the goal because the goal was 12 and we're already at 16 and we've got more months to go. The next square was 10 rereads. I did reread The Great Gatsby, so that goes up by 1 and puts us at 7. I did not have any big books this month, and I also did not finish any series this month. Those stay at 4 and 8. That is the bingo board from hell. Honestly, having a questionable time in August, but I'm doing like 4 different readathons, so who knows what's gonna happen. If you made it this far in the video, leave me a green emoji for the green light in The Great Gatsby, because how much did we talk about the green light at the end of the pier or at the end of the dock in class? Like, everything was about that fucking green light, and like how much Gatsby was just entranced by going to the end of the dock and staring at the green light across the lake at Daisy's house, and how important that was to him, and just how much that really meant to him, that green light. And it's only in the book 2 fucking times. God, school books are stupid. Anyway, that is all I have for today. If you don't want to miss anything else going on in the library, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down below. That was a lot of words, and until then, I will see you guys next time. Bye!